Welcome everybody to the Vox Box at the European Parliament. We're here today to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, which is the most widely ratified human rights convention that exists, and it has changed lives of millions of children across the world. However, on this particular day, we also need to remember that we need a second revolution for children, and now is the time to do that, because many rights are still violated to a large extent. So to give you some examples of what really still needs doing, more than half of the world's children are still experiencing violence every year, a shocking 1.7 billion children every year. More than half of the world's children, 1.2 billion, are living in extreme poverty or in countries that are full of conflict and can't protect their rights. And the third issue that's also very important to look at is that millions of children are at risk of losing parental care or have already lost it, with millions of them in institutions that might hamper or seriously impact their well-being, their development, and their protection. So today I have the immense pleasure to be talking to two wonderful young leaders from Ethiopia and from Uganda. And we're going to discuss what is needed for the second revolution. So let me introduce our cherished guests. First, from the European Parliament, Julie Ward. Julie is the Vice Chair of the Intergroup of Children's Rights and also of the Committee on Culture and Education. She's a substitute member to the Parliamentary Delegation of the African, Caribbean and Pacific EU Joint Parliamentary Assembly, and she's been a member of the European Parliament since 2014. She will share with us a bit more about what the European Parliament is doing for child's rights. And then I have the immense pleasure to welcome Maria. Maria comes from Uganda, from the Bereket district. She's 14 years old. And she's one of World Vision's young leaders and a main speaker in the Child Parliament in her district. Maria has come to Brussels last Sunday to represent the voices of the children in her district and to talk about the amazing effects that meaningful child participation can have when addressing issues of violence against children. And then the last most cherished speaker is Bereket from Ethiopia, and he is 16 years old, and he's a representative of SOS Children's Villages International. Bereket has lived in an SOS Children's Village in Ethiopia since he was 4 years old, for 11 years, before he gained a scholarship to go to one of the best schools, he's told us, in Ghana, a Pan-African school. And he's here today to talk about access to education and the care for children that is needed in his country and how to avoid losing yet another generation to neglect and lack of opportunity. So let's first hear from Maria.
Yeah. Thank you very much, the moderator. So my question is, according to my country, Uganda has got a lot of laws which are protecting children and protecting the children's rights. And one of the laws was enacted in 2006, and this was banning corporal punishments against children in schools. And unfortunately, the law was enacted, but it is not in action. The law is there, but it's not in action. So my question is, how can the European Parliament help the Ugandan government to overcome, to enforce the laws so that the change can happen?
Well, it's a very timely question, really, because I've just literally come back from the Africa, Caribbean and Pacific and EU Joint Parliamentary Assembly, which was in Rwanda this time. And I'm on the Social Affairs Committee in that Joint Parliamentary Assembly. And we are talking almost non-stop about the situation for children and young people. I think many parliamentarians around the world have realized that children and young people have been ignored in the past, that we've never given them enough consideration regarding their well-being, their health, their rights, parliamentarians seem to be conscious of the fact that young people are the future, and if we're not listening, then it's only storing up trouble for the future. So I just want to set the context, okay? Now, the EU gives a lot of aid to Uganda and other less developed countries or developing countries. and that aid needs to come with certain conditions. And those conditions should include monitoring as well as implementation. So when we're giving money, and we give a lot of money for education, for example, so we need to make sure when that aid is going to the countries, that the countries aren't violating human rights. So we need to make sure that we have monitors in those countries who are seeing what's happening, going out in the field and reporting back. Now, it's important that we keep the aid flowing, okay? We don't want to get to a situation where we're not giving aid, because these countries really need support, but they need support to help themselves rather than us constantly giving support in a kind of patriarchal way. So I think another good thing is about training. Some of the old colonial countries, so for example, Uganda has a historic association with the UK, and I'm British. So many of the things that are happening in the old colonial countries are happening because British people were there from Victorian times, and the way that some of these schools are operating as if it's the 1800s. They're operating like Victorian schools in the UK. But we don't work like that anymore in the UK. And I think what we need to do is have an education program that demonstrates things have moved on. Education is done in a very different way now. Mutually respectful relationships between educators and learners is really, really important. So I think we have to go in there with gloves on, with, you know, willing to be quite challenging, but also in order to hold out a hand and bring people on a journey with us. Perhaps just one more thing to say, and that is that the learning environment is really, really important in terms of whether or not a child wants to engage with the learning process, with the education process. So we also need to be telling governments, like your government, okay, happy children, children who are feeling good about themselves with good mental health, not being afraid, you know, not bearing the scars of beating. These are children who are going to learn better. And education is the key to each country in the world improving their growth, their productivity, eliminating poverty. So it's in the interests of governments actually to end all forms of violence against children, because then the whole country, the whole of society will do better. So it's a question of joining up the dots, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Julie.
Yeah.
Yeah, this leads on nicely to what Bereket was going to ask. So please go ahead, Bereket.
Okay, thank you for this chance. My question is, as we know, the European Union supports those developing countries with money and with all the things they need. And as you said now, they give a lot of money for education, especially for children, to improve their access to quality education, health, nutrition, and all the basic infrastructures they need. But what happens most of the time is, I think, the money is given to the government, and the government decides what they want to implement. Maybe they want to make a road, or they want to make an office. So while making those decisions, are children included in those things because they affect them? Or are children consulted about the things that belong to them, that affect them because they are given them money? And if the children don't ask, or if the children don't have the opportunity to ask for what they want, I can't see the importance, because they'll be making something different or something which can help the adults, not the children. So how can the European Parliament or the European Parliament help the governments to improve the child participation so that the supports will be effectively used and children will be participated in things that affect them?
Yeah. Here in the European Parliament, we really care about what we call civil society. And civil society is citizens who are really active in their communities, joining different campaign groups, different clubs, different initiatives about caring about their community, about caring about their country, about their people, their societies. So I think that we have to push to bring the whole awareness of civil society participation higher up the agenda. I have to say, not just in terms of children but also and young people, but also in terms of women participation as well, and all kinds of people who are outside of society. And this is not just something that we need in your countries, we also need more of that here in Europe too. I have to tell you, it's not good right across the globe, okay? Participation, people talk about it, like they're doing it, but they're not really doing it in a meaningful way. And I think we have to understand about meaningful participation. There are some interesting initiatives. For example, participatory budgeting is something we were doing back in my community in the UK. It's a model from Brazil, so it didn't start here in Europe, and it's another important point to make, which is many good things are happening in other parts of the world. You know, we Europeans, we don't know all the best answers, but participatory budgeting was brought in Brazil, and it was a way of communities deciding on how certain amounts of money were being spent in their local area. And if we joined up participatory budgeting with youth councils, where children and young people could have real power about how money was spent, I think you'd see a very different way of things happening. So that is a very practical suggestion, but again, there needs to be some training, some awareness raising, yeah? When it started in the UK, it had a lot of problems. It wasn't always the best way of doing things, but we have to try, yeah? And each time people try, they make the model better. And so sharing best practice is another thing that we can do. So at this joint parliamentary assembly where I've just been in Kigali, we had a youth conference on the first day. And I think that's important. But one day a year is not enough, okay? And I'm very critical of this. One day a year to bring people into a conference, mainly to sit and listen and not to talk, is not really the best way of engaging young people and listening to them. And if you want to know why roads are built and big buildings, it's because many politicians, they like the tangible things where they can put their name on a building, okay? What you and I are talking about today is intangible, yeah? It's about personal growth, isn't it? It's about stronger communities. And that's harder to quantify. And it's not like a politician who is always seeking power, yeah, can put a label on that. So I think we have to find great ways of telling our stories. When we do successful participation projects, we need to say, hey, look at this, okay? We're doing this and you need to be doing it with us. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Julie. That brings us right into a key topic that we're on about today, which is child participation. And both Maria and Bereket are very much involved in children parliaments. So Article 12 of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child actually emphasizes the right to meaningful participation. And it is maybe the most, or let's say it's maybe the least implemented of the rights guaranteed in the convention. So maybe, Maria and Bereket, you can tell us a little bit more about how you feel about how children need to be listened to and what meaningful participation actually is. Maria.
Yeah, thank you very much, the moderator. According to me, meaningful and effective participation, this is where children are allowed to get involved in various activities happening in the country. For example, when a certain country is making a budget, children are brought up to bring up their opinions about what will help them in the budget. And after getting the children's opinion, the government should take the children's opinion seriously. For example, when there is a conference and children they say something about their rights, what affects them, what helps them. So when the conference is there and the children have said it, let the people in the conference listen carefully to the children, take note of what children have said, and let alone remember everything children have said, then they put it into action. Yeah. That is meaningful and effective participation. Yeah.
Thank you. Bereket.
Thank you again. Maria has explained almost everything. She has said there needs to be children participating, giving their opinion, children being listened to, the actions, what they're asking being implemented to. Yeah, she has actually explained it. I want to add something. So in my SOS Children's Village, we had a child parliament. I think that can be maybe a real life example for child participation. The child participation consisted of 25 members, so each children from every family house. In the child parliament, it was like a children forum for them to express their ideas freely and come up with solutions to problems in the society and make some decisions that affect them or that affect us, children. I was a member there for 4 years, and after 4 years I became the president. I was elected, so everything is democratic. There was not any pressure from anyone. As we children, we discuss about the things that affect us. We discuss about the issues that are on our society. We give our ideas freely, opinions freely. And after that, we can ask the people working in the SOS village, like the social workers, educators, the things that we need, or they listen to our ideas, they respect our ideas, and our ideas, I feel they respect our ideas because I always see a quick response to our questions and ideas, a quick action being implemented. When we ask something, you see a response or something being done for you. So then there's no any pressure. You are not told to ask something. You ask what you want, and based on how good the question is, you see the action. So I think this can be a good example. And I've seen a lot of advantage of child participation because personally, me and my siblings in the SOS village, it helped us enjoy our rights because we know what we want most of the time rather than some people. Then we ask the people what we want. Then based on that, they help us. So we enjoy our rights more. Also, it's made me responsible for the things that affect me. I don't allow anyone to come and decide something on me. I personally am responsible for the things that affect on me. Then I have the right to decide. And it's preparing me for the future because in the future, no one will be deciding for me. I myself will be deciding for myself. I think it has a lot of importance, and it's good if it's implemented everywhere to help every child enjoy all their rights. Thank you.
Thank you, Bereket. Yes, Julie.
I think that we adult leaders could do a lot more to open up the institutions where we work to children and young people. So events like this are really, really important. And the European Parliament is a very open parliament compared to many parliaments around the world. It always feels a bit like a school or a university to me. You know, there's a lot of blue sky thinking, there's a lot of events, people can come and go. We had a climate strike protest this morning, you know. People are here and it's their parliament. So I think that we have to look at the institutions and recognize that they're assemblies for people, yeah? And we are only representatives. And by the way, congratulations for winning an election. It's really cool, isn't it? I won 2 now, so I'm feeling good. But also, I provide a lot of opportunities for young people to job shadow me. So, which means that I'm opening up my office. People follow me, come into meetings with me. They observe me working and the way that I network, the way that I think up strategies to try and get people on my side. Also, with my fantastic staff, looking at how the staff work to support me when we're looking, for example, at making a new law. We have lots of meetings with different human rights organizations, children's rights organizations, and World Vision is one of them. We really have close relationships with a lot of NGOs and civil society. And so having people come into my office to spend time with me, watching the way that I work and the way my staff work is very important. And one of the things that we're going to try and push with the ACP EU Joint Parliamentary Assembly is to have trainees from the Africa, Caribbean and Pacific countries coming here to be trainees in this parliament. And I'm really going to push for that because I think that would strengthen the relationships that our countries already have through our parliaments coming together with elected adult politicians. But to have these young trainees be here working with us, we will certainly learn a lot, and I think it will improve the situation. But I've always felt that children and young people are experts of their own experience, yeah? in the same way that very old people are experts of their own experience. And we just have to be more aware and cognizant of the fact that people who are at a certain stage of life or from certain different ethnic minorities, for example, or who are experiencing certain problems in their life, for example, an AIDS, as somebody suffering from AIDS is an expert of that experience. Yeah, we also always need to be very humble and listen to those people, because their experiences are more expert than ours. Okay, yeah. So that would be my. That's kind of my take on it. Yeah, and to have the widest possible group of voices, the diversity of voices that help us as legislators to make good policy and make good law, okay? Not shutting the door, but keeping that door open for all voices.
Thank you very much, Julie.
Okay.
We're coming close to the end, but I just wanted to give you another opportunity if there was anything else either of you would wanted to tell Julie or ask for, or tell another bit of your story.
Yeah. Thank you for giving me this another chance. The thing is, it's every child is right to have to be studying in a good learning environment. It's a children's right. But what beats my mind is, in my country, Uganda, it's some sort of different, because in some districts, the schools are really in a bad situation. For example, the children are studying in a space, they study under trees. There is not enough infrastructures, yet it's their right to study in a very good learning environment. Another example is about me. I'm in a boarding school, not because I'm there willingly, but the school I have to go to, it's very far, and there is a risk of being trafficked or being sexually violated, because in between the way from school up to home, there are a lot of sugarcane plantations, and it's a risk for me to move because I may either be trafficked or violate sexually. So why should I be in a boarding school because the place is not safe for me? It's my right to stay in a safe environment. Yeah, that's what I have to.
Thank you, Maria. Very, very important. Access of girls to school because of violence on the way to school. Absolutely. Yeah. Bereket, anything else?
Thank you again. One thing I want to say at the end is I think that there should be a lot of organizations to help children all over the world, in every city, in every place. And children should be aware of these organizations, because whenever something happens to them, they can be able to go report and get all the support they need. Because I had a friend in my school where we were in grade 4. He had only his mother. Then he lost his mother when he was in grade 4. And he had only his elder brother. There was no one to help him. Like I and my other friends, we used to share our foods together. We used to give him some clothes. We used to give him what we can. But that wasn't efficient, because he needed someone to control him at home, to help him with his education, to help him with his whole life. And he didn't really do well in school, and he failed that time. After that, like he went to other school, he repeated. Like now he has stopped school. I hope he will go back, but still has stopped school. He has been addicted. So if there were organizations, a lot of organizations to help everywhere to every child, they will be helped. And there are lots of organizations in my city actually, but no one knows. Like I can see children don't know, a lot of children don't know. So if they don't know, how are they going to get those opportunities? How are they going to get those accesses? They have to wait for opportunity. That one, it won't be safe for them. So I think there need to be a lot of organizations to help children. The children must be aware of those organizations. They should be taught with those things from the early age, in KG, in primary school. So whenever something happens to them, they can go ask for help, get all the help they need. That's what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Bereket. If you want to have a finishing sentence, Julie.
Yes, well, two things to say, really. Just obviously in Rwanda, there are many orphans. There were so many people who lost their parents in the genocide against the Tutsis. And I know an amazing organization of young boys, young men, who all found themselves as orphans, and they had a burning desire to learn, to be educated, to improve both themselves but also their country. And they set up a wonderful social enterprise called Seven. There were 7 of them. Now there's 1,000 of them, and they're doing phenomenal things. And they have set up like a little hostel where the people are coming to stay, and the money, and they're doing tours, and all the money for that is helping to pay for their education through university. So social entrepreneurship is a very important concept, okay? Which means running things in a business-like way, but running it for a social benefit, for a social purpose. Now, I don't think you young people have to wait, okay? And that young man that you talked about there, you said he was waiting, but you know, children, young people, you're only child and young person once. Those years go very, very fast, and you can't wait. So I think that action is really important, and it's easier to do things when you come together as a group than if you try and do something by yourself. So finding other people with like minds, maybe starting with small actions and then growing those to bigger actions is the way to go. And I know so many amazing young people all over the world from many different countries who made phenomenal things happen because they saw a need and they did something. You are the leaders of the future. Okay?
Thank you very much. Thank you everybody for participating and for the amazing stories. And let's continue enjoying the grand celebration of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. And come to the plenary this afternoon where both Bereket and Maria will be speaking, and we're very much looking forward to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.